In this world, power was gained not by birthright and not by the strength of muscles. Power was gained by those whom the spirits answered. Every child on the day of their 16th birthday went through the awakening ritual. In a temple or by an ancient stone, in a circle of runes or under the sky, if the family was poor. If a spirit responded, the person received a sign. A seal on the skin, cold in the palm, a flash of light in the chest. From that day on, he could call his spirit, borrow its power, and rise higher in the world than any bloodline would allow. Some received animal spirits, lions, wolves, eagles, bears. Others spirits of rivers, wind, metal, lightning. Rare lucky ones awakened legendary spirits, a giant catfish that raised storms on lakes, a doe whose feet did not touch the ground while running, a lion whose shadow devoured fear, a white tiger, a heavenly crane, a stone bull, a fiery phoenix. And only one person in the capital district could not awaken. His name was Ren, and if the world knew how to laugh, it would have laughed at him first. Ren stood in the last row of students and watched as his friend Hao raised his hand over the summoning circle. The air trembled. Blue light rose from the ritual seal. The flames of the candles around the circle stretched toward the center, as if the sky itself had leaned down to look. Then the light struck upward, and a huge silhouette of a giant catfish appeared in the air, semi-transparent, with silver whiskers and eyes in which ancient power pulsed. The crowd gasped. Hao cried out in delight, fell to his knees, and almost burst into tears. A legendary spirit, someone among the elders shouted. A giant catfish. The teacher trembled with excitement. The elders bowed. Even the usually cold Master Tao did not hide his smile. Ren smiled along with everyone, and inside him something quietly cracked again. Because Hao was not the only one. That same year, his childhood friends awakened spirits. Yun a doe, graceful and swift. Bo a lion, fierce and proud. Xiao a white crane, spiritual and rare. Two more, a wolf and a thunder snake. Everyone received power. Everyone felt a response. Everyone changed. Only Ren did not. He had gone through the ritual too. At 14 and at 15, and now when he had turned 16, he stood in the circle again. Each time the spirits passed by him as if he were not there, every touch of power flowed off him without staying. The ritual masters first thought the mistake was in the seal, then that he was concentrating poorly, then that his spiritual core was sleeping too deeply, then that he was simply talentless. By the age of 16, no one hid it anymore. In their city, it was believed that a person without a spirit was not simply weak. He was as if incomplete, unfinished, as if fate had changed its mind at the last moment about giving him a place. Ren learned to smile at such things. It was more useful than crying. Hao caught up with him already in the evening. Hey, Ren. Ren was walking along the embankment alone. In his hands was an empty basket from his mother's shop. The evening wind ruffled his bangs. What? He asked without turning around. Hao hesitated. Are you all right? Ren smirked. Excellent question. I didn't mean to. I know. Ren finally turned around. You received a legendary spirit? I'm happy for you. Hao looked away. He was a good guy. That was exactly why talking to him was harder than talking to anyone else. Listen, this doesn't mean that I'm worse? Ren shrugged. Of course it does. Hao flinched. Ren did not push further. He knew if he said too much, Hao would suffer even more. And Hao was already too kind for this world. Go, Ren said calmly. Your spirit is waiting for you. Hao wanted to answer something but could not. He just nodded and left. Ren remained alone by the water. In the reflection, he saw an ordinary boy. Thin, dark-haired, with a stubborn chin and eyes that had long grown used to observing rather than hoping. He looked at his reflection and thought that the world was arranged disgustingly simply. If you have a spirit, they listen to you. If not, they tolerate you. If you do not have a spirit long enough, they begin to look at you as a mistake. He hated it, and for the first time, hatred became not weakness, but direction. The world of spirits was cruel to the weak. Not because weakness was a vice, because it was convenient to use. Ren understood this quickly. He was not stupid, and that was exactly what made his pain especially cold. While other teenagers argued over whose spirits were stronger, he noticed how adults used awakening in trade, in politics, in wars between houses. A strong spirit opened doors. A legendary spirit almost made a person untouchable, and a spiritless one. A spiritless one was just a body on a list. Ren worked part-time in the artisan's quarter. He carried coal, repaired crates, ran errands. He did not complain his mother worked even more. His father had died early before Ren had even memorized his face well. The house rested on her. One evening, the warehouse owner, a red-faced fat man named Song, ordered Ren to carry heavy sacks of salt into the lower cellar. Ren went. The cellar smelled of dampness, rotten wood, and something metallic. He had almost finished when he heard voices upstairs. At first drunken ones, then laughter, and then a scream. Ren froze, then another scream, then a crash. Someone upstairs had broken something, and laughter again, no longer cheerful, but cruel, lazy, like that of people who were bored and had decided to amuse themselves with someone else's pain. Ren quietly climbed the stairs. He saw them immediately. 3 spirit bearers passing through the warehouse, 2 in city guard uniforms, the third in an expensive green cloak with gold embroidery. Nearby was Tsung, pale, bowed down to the ground. On the floor lay a broken basket, scattered apples and blood. A servant girl no older than 14 lay by the wall, pressing her hand to her face. One of the guards had just hit her. "Clumsy," said the nobleman in the green cloak. "And you call this a servant?" Cheng hurriedly bowed even lower. "My lord, please forgive. Be silent." The nobleman kicked a scattered apple as if it had insulted him. Boring, very boring. Ren felt something inside him clench coldly. He was already about to step back when the guard noticed him. "Hey, you!" Ren froze. "Come here." He obeyed. The guard looked him over. "A worker?" "No, my lord. I am a warehouse apprentice." "Ah, so no one," the man smirked. The nobleman in the green cloak looked at Ren with lazy interest. "Do you have a spirit?" Ren swallowed. "No, my lord." A smile appeared on the nobleman's face. An ugly one, almost affectionate. "Then you are not even useful. Pity." What happened next happened quickly. The guard shoved him in the shoulder, not hard, just out of boredom. Ren stepped back, but on the step beneath him there was water. His foot slipped. He hit his back against the wall. The blow was dull, painful, and then the nobleman laughed. "Just look at that. He doesn't even have balance." The guards laughed along with him. Ren got up, clenching his teeth. His gaze was empty, almost calm, but inside something was no longer simply cracking. The nobleman came closer. "If you have no spirit, why live so seriously at all?" Ren did not answer. The guard slapped him across the face. Ren staggered but did not fall. And then the nobleman said a phrase that remained in his memory forever. "The world is neither colder nor warmer because of people like you." He laughed. Ren raised his eyes and saw the guard raising his hand again, not even to strike, but simply to show power. At that moment, somewhere deep inside him, something stirred. Not a spirit, not yet a spirit, but something. Ren ran out of the warehouse through the back door. He was not ashamed of running away. It was not cowardice, but calculation. 3 spiritually strengthened adults against him with no chance. He would have died, and probably quickly. Sometimes survival is the only form of revenge available at that moment. He ran through narrow alleys until he heard heavy footsteps behind him and a shout. "Catch the boy!" They did not simply want to catch him. They were bored. That made them more dangerous. Ren turned toward the old bridge over the canal. The water was fast, dark. 2 guards were already walking across the bridge, cutting off his path. He stopped. To the left, a wall. To the right, water. Behind him, them. And then Ren suddenly understood clearly. Now he would die. Not maybe, not if luck is bad. Right now. Strangely, in that moment, fear left. Only a cold, pure emptiness remained. The guard stepped toward him. "Caught you!" Ren stepped back to the edge of the bridge. His foot slipped on the wet boards. A strange thought flashed through his head. Mother, basket, water, the nobleman's laughter, failed rituals, Hao's face, the giant catfish in the air, the doe, lions, cranes. Everyone had a spirit, everyone had power, everyone had a choice, and he had nothing. He closed his eyes, and in that darkness for the first time he felt something icy. Not the cold of fear, not the cold of water. A pure, clear, deep cold, as if someone had touched the very core of his soul. At last, a female voice whispered. Ren sharply opened his eyes. A girl stood before him. No, she was not standing. She had appeared. She was the size of a small dog, a little above his knee in height, all blue, in a short blue garment as well, with shoulder-length silver hair and eyes the color of the winter sky. Cold of such force emanated from her that frost immediately appeared on the bridge. The guards froze. The nobleman at the other end of the bridge frowned. "What is that?" The girl raised her chin, and the air around them trembled. "I am Sarah," she said. Her voice was thin, but in it there was authority that made one want to bow one's head. A mythical spirit, the Ice Queen. The guards tried to attack first. That was their mistake. One of them took a step, and the bridge beneath his feet became covered with ice. Another swung his sword, but the blade did not reach. The air around the spirit girl froze like solid water. Then she raised her hand, and 2 huge ice spikes grew straight out of the boards of the bridge, throwing the guards to the sides. Ren watched this with his mouth open. The nobleman in the green cloak turned pale. A mythical spirit. He breathed out. Sarah shifted her icy gaze to him. "You dare touch my master?" Master. That word struck Ren harder than anything else. One of the guards already coming to his senses tried to grab Ren, but for the first time in many years he felt not helplessness, but directed power. Something inside his chest opened. Sarah turned to him. "Breathe deeper, Ren. Accept me. Accept." He barely managed to say, "Yes." She held out her small palm to him. Ren did not understand how it worked, but everything inside him, everything that had accumulated for years, was already reaching toward her. He touched her hand, and the world changed. Cold passed through his body not as pain, but as a stream of clarity. He saw invisible threads, saw the movement of spiritual energy, saw how someone else's power pulsed in the nobleman's chest, rough and heavy, and around himself for the first time there appeared a weak but real layer of light. Sarah smiled with a very small, almost childlike smile. "Like that," she said. A whirlwind of frost rose on the bridge. The guards rushed back, but it was too late. Ren felt the first wave of ice burst from his palm, clumsy, weak, but real. The boards beneath the guards became covered with a crust. One slipped, the second fell. The third was struck in the chest by an ice block and flew back to the railing. The nobleman stepped back. Impossible. He had no spirit. Ren looked at his hands and understood. He was not empty. He had simply been waiting too long. The nobleman fled. The guards too. It was the right choice on their part, though a late one. Ren stood on the bridge, breathing heavily, and could not believe what was happening. The world had suddenly become too wide, too bright, and somehow a door had appeared in it that had not existed before. Sarah stood beside him on the railing, swaying slightly in the wind, like a small but completely self-assured queen. "You were 16 years late to your awakening," she said. "That is irritating." Ren laughed. He had not expected it himself, but he laughed. "Sorry, do not apologize. Better learn." He sat down right on the boards of the bridge, still trembling from adrenaline. "Why did you appear exactly now?" Sarah looked at the dark water under the bridge. "Because you finally stopped asking the world for permission to exist." Ren was silent. "Weak spirits come to those who call. Strong ones to those who survive and do not break. Mythical ones to those who pass through death and still choose to keep living." Ren looked at her. "You speak as if you knew I would end up here. I knew that you would walk along the edge long enough to one day hear me." He did not understand everything, but he understood the main thing. "So, now I can fight?" Sarah snorted. "You not only can, you must. Since I chose you, do not dare waste it." Ren looked again at his palms. Thin frost trembled on them. He thought of Hao, Yun, Bo, Xiao, of the friends who were already far ahead. He thought about how long people had pitied him or written him off. He thought of the nobleman's laughter, and for the first time in his entire life he felt not envy, purpose. Sarah turned out to be not just a spirit, but a very complicated spirit. Ren discovered this on the 3rd day after the awakening, when he tried to summon her again. She appeared as before, small, blue, with a mockingly raised eyebrow, and immediately said, "If you summoned me just to brag, I will freeze your ears." "I am not bragging. Then why?" Ren coughed. "I want to understand how you work." Finally, a reasonable question. Sarah explained that as the mythical spirit, the Ice Queen, she was connected not only with cold, but also with temperature control, energy crystallization, protective barriers, and enhanced perception. She was not just an ice girl, she was an ancient spirit with her own will and memory. "And you are not required to obey me completely?" Ren asked. Sarah looked at him carefully. "I chose you. That is not the same as slavery. If you are a worthy master, I will be stronger beside you. If you become foolish and greedy, I will leave." It was fair, and Ren liked that. He began training every day. At first it was hard. Very hard. His spiritual core turned out not to be weak, simply sleeping, like a stone under a winter river. Sarah taught him to feel the flow of spirit inside, direct cold into his limbs, create a thin, icy crust on his skin, enhance his sight and hearing, and then create form. Small needles, sharp plates, thin rings of ice. The first successes were laughable. Sometimes the ice came out crooked. Sometimes only one hand froze. Sometimes he accidentally covered his own shoes with frost. Sarah did not scold often, but when she did, it was scarier than ordinary scolding. She was tiny but absolutely unyielding. Do not press on power like on a tree, she said. Listen to it. Ice does not break, ice waits. Ren did not understand this immediately, but when he understood, everything changed. A month and a half later, Ren returned to the capital district, not to show his power too early. He came to see his friends. Hao met him at the training ground. At first, Hao did not believe it was him. Then he noticed the thin ice on the railing behind his back where Ren had accidentally touched it with his hand. Then he felt the spirit. Hao's giant catfish rose into the sky behind his shoulder like the shadow of an ancient lake. You awakened? Hao breathed out. Ren nodded. Yes. Hao stepped forward and hugged him so tightly that Ren nearly suffocated. I thought that I couldn't? Ren smirked. I thought so too. Yunbo and Xiao came next. Each of them felt that something had changed with Ren. Bo, whose spirit was a lion, looked at him with respect that Ren had never seen in his gaze before. What spirit? Ren did not answer immediately. Then he said, the Ice Queen. The silence was complete. Then Xiao slowly said, a mythical spirit? Yes, Yun covered her mouth with her palm. Wow, Bo laughed, and we were worried that you would fall behind. For the first time in a long time, Ren felt not self-pity but warmth. They did not look down on him, not now. Hao clapped him on the shoulder, so now you are with us. Ren looked at all of them, and then he understood that from that day on, life had truly changed. Ren's power grew faster than he expected. Not because he had become a genius overnight, but because he had something many strong awakened ones did not have. Hunger. Not for glory, but for meaning. He studied like one possessed. He studied combat schools, rune techniques, paths of concentrating spiritual power. Sarah was a strict teacher, sometimes cruel. You are trying again to strike with force where calculation is needed, she said, sitting on his shoulder while he trained. I am learning, slowly. You are small and very harmful, and you are a former failure who has finally become interesting. Do not spoil the impression. Ren snorted but continued. Gradually, he understood one more thing. His spirit was not only about cold. The Ice Queen enhanced his perception. He began to notice the flows of spirit around people, weaknesses and defenses, hidden intentions in the movement of the body. He learned to use ice not as a weapon of brute force, but as an instrument of control. Ice mirrors, thin spikes, sliding fields, barrier circles, freezing the air to change the trajectory of blows. He was not the strongest physically, but he became the most inconvenient for an opponent. And that was far more dangerous. A year had passed since the day Ren awakened Sarah. Now many already knew about him. Not everyone considered him strong. Some still remembered the boy who could not awaken a spirit for so many years in a row. Some said he had simply been lucky. Some said that the Ice Queen spirit was too weak for real combat. And some even called him a strange upstart who could not be trusted. Ren had grown used to it. He had grown used to it even before the awakening, when people looked at him as a failure. So now other people's words almost did not hurt him. Almost. But one simple thought still lived in his soul. I will show them yet. Sarah sat on his shoulder and looked down at the city as if it belonged to her. You are angry again, she said. No, you are lying. Ren snorted. I am just thinking. So you are angry and thinking at the same time. Ren did not argue. Arguing with Sarah was useless. They were walking along the street toward the Spirit Academy. Today was the selection day for the city student tournament. The best young masters from the whole district were to show their strength before mentors, merchants, and clan representatives. Ren had not intended to participate, but his name had already been entered on the list, and it was not a joke. It was noisy in the academy courtyard. Young masters stood in groups, argued, laughed, showed their spirits to one another. Someone summoned a fox of fire, someone a stone boar, someone a bird that looked like blue flame. Ren walked past them calmly. Some recognized him immediately. That's him, that same spiritless one? No, now he has the Ice Queen. Seriously? They say it's a mythical spirit. Come on. Ren pretended not to hear. Hao was already waiting for him by the arena. Over the year, his friend had changed very much. His body had become stronger, his movements more confident. The giant catfish he had awakened gave him powerful force of water and pressure. When Hao walked across the ground, it seemed that the very air around him became heavier. You came after all, Hao said. They signed me up without asking. That sounds like a problem. It is a problem. Hao laughed. Yun came up next, with Bo and Xiao beside her. All of them were no longer just childhood friends. They had become young masters, each with their own name, their own style, and their own path. They say they want to put you against a senior student, Yun said. Against whom? Against Lei Zhen. Ren frowned. The name meant nothing to him, but from Bo's face he understood at once that this was bad. "Is he strong?" Ren asked. "Very," Bo said. "And unpleasant." Xiao nodded. "He has the white wolf spirit, and he likes humiliating the weak." Ren smirked slightly. "Then I will not like him." Sarah, sitting on his shoulder, yawned lazily. "It is time for you to stop being surprised when people turn out to be vile." "I am not surprised. Of course. You're just preparing to freeze them, if necessary, now that I like." Lei Jin appeared in the arena closer to noon. He was 4 years older than Ren, tall, thin, with a cold, almost arrogant face. His clothes were expensive, and his gait was such as if he already considered himself the winner in advance. Beside him walked his spirit, a huge white wolf, not an ordinary one. The spirit was twice as tall as a man, with silver fur and blue eyes in which there was nothing human. From him came a feeling of sharp cold and predatory confidence. The crowd began whispering. Lei Jin is participating again. They say he defeated 3 at once last month. Who is he against today? That boy who has the Ice Queen. Ren stood at the entrance to the arena and looked at him. Lei Jin noticed him and smirked. "So you are that Ren? And you, then, are that Lei Jin? I heard you have nothing except a pretty fairy tale about a mythical spirit." Ren shrugged. "And I heard you have a habit of talking too much before losing." Lei Jin's face twisted for a moment. The spectators gasped. At that moment, Sarah laughed softly. "Good. I already like this fight." The judge gave the signal. Lei Jin attacked immediately. The white wolf rushed forward like snowy lightning. His paws almost did not touch the ground. The air in the arena groaned from the spirit's power. Ren sharply stepped aside. Sarah raised her small palm. An ice barrier immediately grew in front of him. The wolf crashed into it with a dull crack. The ice cracked, but did not break at once. Ren did not waste time. He took a step forward, stretched out his hand, and created thin, icy threads that slid along the ground toward his opponent's legs. Lei Jin noticed this too late. The threads bound his left leg. "What?" Ren jerked his hand. The ice sharply tightened. Lei Jin fell to one knee. The crowd gasped, but the white wolf roared and its breath struck the arena with a wave of cold wind. The ice on the threads began to break, and Ren had to jump back. Sarah looked at him. "Do not hurry. I am not hurrying. You are. You want to win beautifully." Ren grimaced. "And you want me to win simply. I want you to win. The rest does not matter." Lei Jin was no longer smiling. He understood that Ren was not an accident. Now he acted more cautiously. The white wolf moved in circles, not letting him approach. Lei Jin himself raised his hand, and a wave of sharp wind mixed with icy needles flew from his palm. Ren managed to put up a shield, but several needles still scratched his shoulder. The pain was sharp. The crowd exploded with shouts. "Ren, careful!" He gritted his teeth. Sarah was already nearby, her eyes darkened. "Are you angry?" "A little." "Excellent." She waved her hand, and then the entire floor of the arena became covered with a smooth layer of ice. Lei Jin slipped. The white wolf also lost its balance for a moment. That was enough. Ren rushed forward, gathered power in his right hand, and struck the ground with his palm. A tall, transparent wall rose from the ice, and then an icy whip darted toward Lei Jin, straight into his chest. Lei Jin managed to shield himself with his spirit, but the force of the blow threw him to the edge of the arena. The judge had already raised his hand to declare defeat. But then Lei Jin screamed with rage and released all his spirit in one burst. The white wolf became even larger, its eyes flared, and the arena trembled. This was a dangerous moment. Ren understood it instantly. When a spirit goes out of control, it can wound not only the opponent, but also the master himself. This had already happened with other students. "He is losing balance," Hao said quietly from the edge of the arena. "If he is not stopped," Yun added. Ren looked at Lei Jin and suddenly understood. He was not just angry. He was afraid to lose. Not for pride, but for something deeper. Maybe for his family, maybe for his own name. Maybe because he was used to considering himself strong, and did not know how to accept defeat. And Ren unexpectedly felt toward him not hatred, but something like pity. "Sarah," he said quietly, "I do not want to break him." The Ice Queen looked at him with interest. "You are softer than you seem, but I still must win." "Yes, then help me do it without excess," Sarah smiled. "Now you are speaking like a master." She raised her hands, and in the next moment, all the ice in the arena gathered into one sharp circle around Lei Jin, not touching his body, but compressing the space around him. The white wolf growled, not understanding where to attack. Ren stepped forward, not quickly, not sharply, simply confidently. Surrender, he said. Lei Zhen looked at him with rage. Never. Then you will lose control. I don't care. Ren saw it in his eyes. Stubbornness, fear, pride, despair. Everything mixed together. And then he did what no one expected. He removed the ice wall. The crowd gasped. Lei Zhen did not understand either. What are you doing? Ren raised his palm. I am giving you one more attempt. Why? Because if you break right now, you will not become stronger, only angrier. The words hung in the air. Lei Zhen clenched his teeth. The white wolf slowly shrank. The tension in the arena weakened. The judge looked at both of them and declared Ren's victory. The crowd exploded with shouts, but Ren stood without moving and looked only at Lei Zhen. He was breathing heavily, then slowly turned away and left the arena without saying a word. Hao ran up first. You did it. Bo clapped Ren on the back so hard that he almost fell. Yun laughed. Xiao only said quietly, You won not only with strength. Ren tiredly sank onto the bench. Sarah sat beside him and folded her arms. Not bad. Is that a compliment? Do not get conceited. I just did not expect you to show brains. Very nice. And that is also a compliment. Victory in the tournament changed a lot. Now people looked at Ren differently. Not everyone began to respect him, of course not. But now he was no longer considered just a lucky one. They began to notice him as a person who could think, fight, and hold himself under pressure. For a spirit master, that was almost as important as power. He was invited to training groups. He was called to exhibition duels. He was offered to become a student under one of the small clans. Ren refused. He remembered who he was and remembered what he had started for. One evening, Hao, Yun, Bo, and Xiao met him on the roof of the old tower. It had been their favorite place since childhood. We heard about the offers, Hao said. And you did not accept a single one. I do not want to be someone's weapon, Ren answered. Bo nodded. Correct answer. Yun sat down beside him. And what do you want? Ren looked at the sky. He had been thinking about this for a long time. I want to know why I did not awaken back then, when all of you awakened. Why Sarah came only when I had almost died. And whether there are other spirits like her. Xiao whistled softly. That sounds dangerous. Everything interesting is dangerous, Ren smirked. Sarah, of course, was not thrilled. You want to search for ancient spirits? Yes, and climb into places where normal masters do not climb? Possibly. Wonderful, she said dryly. I did not choose a boring idiot. Ren laughed, but then he became serious. Did you know there are other mythical spirits? Sarah was silent for a moment. There are rumors. There are stories. And the truth. The truth is rarely simple. Then we will search. The Ice Queen looked at him with a long gaze. Yes, master, we will search. A few days later, an unfamiliar caravan arrived in the capital. It was accompanied by people in dark cloaks, and on the wagons were signs Ren had never seen before. Hao was the first to notice that one of these people wore the seal of an ancient clan on his belt. Yun said that a strange spiritual aura came from the wagons. Bo tensed immediately. Xiao simply said quietly, They are not locals. Ren stood in the street and watched as the caravan passed by the academy. Sarah sat on his shoulder. Do you feel it? She asked. Ren nodded. Yes, there is something important there. He looked at the wagons and felt it himself. Cold, distant, unfamiliar. As if somewhere ahead a new door was opening. And he understood that this was only the beginning. Not the end of the path, not the peak, just the next step. Ren slowly clenched his fist. The Ice Queen smiled slightly, and they went forward. The caravan had not arrived for nothing. This became clear the very next day when an official letter came to the Spirit Academy. On the paper was the seal of the ancient Beihan clan, a northern lineage that everyone in the capital had heard of, but few had seen. The clan was old, rich, and closed. Its masters rarely appeared in the city, and if they did appear, it meant only one thing. Something big was happening. Ren was summoned to the main hall of the academy. The mentors, several officials from the spiritual council, and two strangers in long blue cloaks were already standing there. One was elderly with gray hair and a straight back. The second was young, almost Ren's age, tall with a cold gaze and long fingers, as if accustomed to holding a weapon rather than a pen. The elderly one was named Master Lanzhou. The young one was Bei Shen. Sarah, sitting on Ren's shoulder, immediately tensed. I do not like this clan, she said quietly. Do you know them? Not everything, but enough to be cautious. Ren entered the hall and bowed as he had been taught. Master Lanzhou answered with a short nod. You are Ren, the one who awakened the Ice Queen. Yes, we want to speak with you. Ren did not move. About what? Bei Shen looked at Sarah, not at him. about the spirit that chose you. Silence hung in the hall. Hao, standing by the far wall, frowned. Yun was also watching warily. Bo crossed his arms. Zhao narrowed his eyes slightly. Ren, for the first time, felt that the conversation would not be simple. Master Lanzhou spoke calmly, but in his voice there was the strength of a man who was used to not being contradicted. The Ice Queen is not an ordinary mythical spirit. Ren remained silent. We have long been searching for spirits of the Northern Line. The old records speak of an ancient ice court that existed long before the current clans. Spirits of cold, ice, and snow served there. Their main ruler was called differently, but in translation she is often mentioned as the Ice Queen. Sarah coldly narrowed her eyes. Translations, then. Lanzhou continued as if he had not heard. If she is truly awakened, it changes a lot. We want to study her origin. Ren immediately tensed. Study? In safe conditions. How does that sound? Like concern for a rare spirit, Bei Shen said dryly. Sarah laughed very quietly. It sounds like bring me in chains and examine me through glass. Bei Shen looked directly at her for the first time. The mythical spirit speaks clearly, so we were not mistaken. Ren took a step forward. She is not an object for study. Lanzhou inclined his head. We did not claim that, but that is what you want. We want to understand her nature, the old man said calmly. And if she is connected to the ancient northern line, it may be useful to the entire world of spirits. Ren felt irritation rising inside him. He had already learned to read such conversations. Useful to the world very often meant useful to us. Sarah suddenly said quietly, Ren, do not agree immediately. I am not going to. Lanzhou pretended not to notice her words. We offer you access to the archives of the Beihan clan, as well as personal guidance from northern masters. In return, you will allow us to observe your spirit. No, Ren said at once. The hall became very quiet. Hao exhaled in surprise. Lanzhou's expression did not change. Think, such a chance does not come to everyone. I already have. You are refusing knowledge? I am refusing to let anyone treat Sarah like a thing. Bei Shen narrowed his eyes slightly. You have become very attached to your spirit. Of course. Not too much? Ren looked at him calmly. Too much attachment is when a spirit is used as a tool. I do not do that. Sarah quietly snorted. Well done. Lanzhou held a pause. Good, then I will give you another option. 7 days the Beihan clan is holding the Northern Tournament by Lake Zhan. The strongest students will be there, as well as an ancient ritual for awakening ice techniques. If you want to learn more about the Ice Queen, come. There you will be able to see records that are not kept in the academy. Ren understood that this was not simply an invitation. It was a test, and also a challenge. And if I do not come, then we will consider that you are not ready to work with the ancient heritage, Lanzhou answered, and the Beihan clan will draw its own conclusions. Sarah smiled coldly. Now this is already a threat. Yes, Ren said quietly. He turned to Lanzhou. I will come. The journey north took 4 days. Ren did not travel alone. Hao, Yun, Bo, and Xiao went with him. They insisted. Ren did not argue. First, because the road was unsafe. Second, because with friends nearby, it was easier not to show how uneasy he himself felt. Sarah behaved unusually silently the whole way. You are nervous, Ren noticed on the second day. Of course, because of the clan, because of memory. He looked at her. What memory? Sarah turned away. Later. Ren did not like that later. But he did not press. Lake Zhan turned out to be enormous. It lay among snowy mountains surrounded by pines and stone terraces. A light mist hung over the water, and white peaks were reflected in it. The Beihan clan had built its houses on the shore, low, long buildings of dark wood and light stone. Everything looked very old, very quiet, and very certain of its own rightness. Ren disliked it immediately. At the gates, they were met by students in blue clothes. One of them bowed. Master Ren, they are waiting for you, and my friends? Separate rooms have been assigned to them. Hao frowned. Why separately? The student answered politely but firmly. Such is the clan's order. Ren looked at Sarah. I feel that I already do not like this trip. Me too, she said. The Beihan clan invited only Ren to dinner. It was intentional, he understood at once. Their task was to isolate him, to understand how susceptible he was to influence, whether he could be swayed to their side. Master Lanzhou sat at the head of the table. Beside him were Bei Shen and 3 other senior masters. The conversation was polite, but with underlying pressure. The Ice Queen shows unusual power, one of the masters said. Yes, Ren answered. Do you feel a connection to her on a spiritual level? Of course. How deep is the connection? Ren looked at them. Deep enough. Beishun smirked slightly. We have seen many young masters who overestimate their connection with the spirit, and many old ones who underestimate someone else's. Ren answered calmly. Beishun fell silent. Sarah quietly snorted inside him. Good, the boy knows how to bite. Lanzhou raised his hand, stopping the emerging argument. There is no need for tension. We are not enemies. For now, Sarah muttered. Ren pretended not to hear. Then Lanzhou moved on to the main point. Tomorrow morning, you will undergo the ritual of Northern Reflection. What is that? A test of the ability to control ice energy under extreme conditions. I did not ask for tests, but they will help show your compatibility with the Northern Line. Ren was already about to refuse, but Sarah stopped him with a look. Go, she said mentally. I need to see this too. He nodded. Good. The test took place by the frozen part of the lake. The senior masters of the clan stood in a circle of stone columns. In the center was an ice slab almost half a meter thick. Ancient symbols had been carved into it. Lanzhou explained the rules. You will enter the circle. The ice seals will create pressure on your spiritual system. Your task is to hold your spirit and not let it go out of control. And that is all? Bo asked, who had been allowed to observe from the guest platform. That is all, the old man answered. But Ren felt a catch. So did Sarah. They do not simply want to test you, she whispered. They want to see my reaction. Ren stepped into the circle. Immediately the air became heavier. Cold began to flow from the stone columns. Not ordinary cold. Deep, old, as if the ice itself were alive and remembered more than people live. Ren straightened. For the first minutes, everything was normal. He held the flow of spirit, felt Sarah nearby. But then the symbols on the slab flared, and a whirlwind of white frost rose around him. The ice began to sing. It was strange and unpleasant. Sarah suddenly tensed sharply. Ren, these are not just seals. What? This is memory. He did not understand. But then he saw. Images appeared before his eyes as if someone had opened an old chest. A winter palace, tall columns of ice, blue cloaks, and a woman, tall, ancient, majestic. Her face was hidden by a silver crown, but in her eyes burned the same cold as in Sarah's. Ren staggered. Sarah? She was paler than usual. I remember her. The test was stopped immediately. The senior masters began exchanging glances. Lanzhou took a step forward. What did you see? Ren did not answer immediately. He looked at Sarah. For the first time all this time, she looked not mocking, not sharp-tongued, but truly shaken. I saw a palace, she said quietly, and a throne, and a name. What name? Ren asked. She slowly raised her eyes. The Crystal Empress. The whole platform froze. Even the wind seemed to become quieter. Lanzhou turned pale, barely noticeably. Beishun abruptly stepped forward. Are you sure? Sarah looked directly at him. I do not forget such things. Lanzhou was silent for a long time. This is impossible, he finally said quietly. In the archive there are only mentions of the Ice Queen, not of the Empress. Sarah smirked coldly. Of course, because you were searching for the wrong name. Ren felt anxiety growing inside him. What is happening? He asked. Lanzhou did not answer immediately. In ancient times there was a northern court of spirits. It was ruled by the Crystal Empress, but all records of her were destroyed. Why? Hao asked, who had already come closer together with the others. The old man looked at him because she was betrayed by her own clan. At night, Ren could not sleep. He paced around the room while Sarah sat on the windowsill and looked into the darkness. You did not tell me everything, Ren finally said. Sarah did not turn around. Yes, why? Because I was not ready. Ren stopped. Ready for what? For someone to one day reach what came before me. It sounded strange and frightening. He sat down opposite her. Tell me. Sarah was silent for a long time. Then she said, I was not always small. I was not always the way you see me. I was part of the court. Not the highest spirit, not the main ruler, but one of her close attendants. I served the Empress. Ren froze. Served? Yes, so you remember everything? Not everything, but enough. She clenched her small hands. Back then, the court was great. Not merely by strength. It kept the balance between spirits and people. People respected us. Spirits did not interfere without reason. Ren listened without interrupting. But then those who wanted power more than balance appeared. One of the Northern Masters made a deal with an outside clan. He wanted to subjugate the court to himself. A war began, the Empress was betrayed from within, the court was destroyed, the records were burned. Names were erased, and everything they could not kill they hid or sealed away. Ren exhaled quietly. And you were sealed too? Not exactly. Sarah looked at him. I tried to protect the core of the court. I was shattered into fragments. For a long time I slept. Then I heard you. He looked at her and something warm and heavy rose in his chest. You chose me, yes. Why? Sarah smiled weakly. Because you were broken but not bent. And also, because you were the only one who did not try to turn me into a resource. Ren smiled back. Then he suddenly understood the main thing. So the Beihan clan knows the truth? Not all of it, Sarah answered. But the elders know more than they say. The next day, Ren did not wait. He took Hao, Yun, Bo, and Xiao. He said only one thing: we need to get into the archive. Hao was surprised. Now? Yes. Bo raised an eyebrow. Why? Because I need to understand what they are hiding. Yun understood at once. Is this connected to Sarah? Yes. Xiao nodded. I am with you. They walked quietly, hiding along the side paths toward the clan's main archive building. From the outside, it looked like an ordinary stone hall, but Ren felt that something important was stored inside. Sarah was tense. There are seals there, she warned, and ancient freezing. I feel them. What should we expect? If the clan really destroyed the old records, there may be residual traces there, and possibly the name of the one who betrayed the court. Ren clenched his teeth. When they reached the archive, the door was closed, but Zhao quickly noticed a side passage for students. Inside smelled of old paper, dust, and stone. Shelves stretched into the depth of the hall, books, scrolls, tablets, and seals on metal cabinets. Which section? Bo whispered. Sarah pointed with her gaze to the far corner. There. Ren went first. On one of the shelves lay a scroll covered with a thick layer of dust. On it was a sign resembling a crown of ice. Ren's heart began beating faster. He unrolled the scroll and saw the name. The Crystal Empress. Beneath the name was a line that sent cold down his back. She died not from an enemy outside, betrayed by the keeper of the Northern Throne. Everyone froze. Sarah whispered, There it is. Ren slowly raised his head. Who is the keeper? But they did not receive an answer, because at that moment, behind their backs, someone said coldly, And this is what you should not have read. Ren turned around. Beishen stood in the passage, and in his eyes there was no longer either respect or politeness, only danger. Beishen was not alone. Behind him stood 2 senior masters of the clan and 3 students. Ren instantly understood they had been waiting. Give me the scroll, Beishen said evenly. No, Ren answered. You do not understand what you are getting into. But I understand that you hid the truth. Beishen took a step forward. The truth is dangerous. For whom? For you, for her. For everything that is only beginning to awaken again. Sarah flared with cold in Ren's chest. He is lying, she said. Possibly, Ren answered in a whisper. But he saw something else. Beishen was not merely angry. He was frightened. Truly frightened. Ren raised the scroll higher. Tell me who the keeper was. Beishen was silent. Then one of the senior masters sharply stepped forward and threw an icy sign at them. Ren managed to put up a barrier, but the blow threw him into a shelf. The scroll almost fell out. Hao immediately summoned his giant catfish, and water from the archive's ice reservoirs rose as a wall. Yun released a stream of light, blinding one of the students. Bo rushed forward like a lion to knock down the second. Xiao covered the retreat. The fight began quickly. Ren was in the center of the chaos, but he felt only one thing. The scroll could not be lost. Sarah shone with cold light. Give me your hand. Ren clenched his palm. And then the ice around him changed. Not simply freezing, but form. Transparent spears, walls, chains, rings rose from the air. They did not strike blindly, they restricted, cut off, forced the enemies to move where needed. Ren saw a weak point in the clan's formation. Beishen did not want to kill him. The others did, but Beishen did not. He wanted to take the scroll and hide everything. That was important. Ren took a sharp step and threw an ice plate straight under Beishen's feet. He jumped back, but for a moment lost his balance. That was enough. Xiao knocked one student out of the fight. Bo knocked down the second. Hao raised a water strike and shattered the ice seal on the floor. Ren suddenly rushed toward the exit, but Beishen shouted after him, If you continue, you will awaken what destroyed the court. Ren stopped for a moment, turned around. Then I need to know what it was even more. And he left into the darkness together with his friends. They reached the lake only by morning. The scroll was with Ren, wrapped in several layers of cloth. His hands trembled not from fear, but from accumulated tension. Sarah was silent for a very long time. Then she said, if the Crystal Empress truly died from betrayal, then someone even now may be hunting for what remains of her power. Do you think they are already looking for us? I think they have already seen us. Ren looked at the mist over the lake. And what now? Sarah answered quietly, now you must become stronger faster than they can close the old story again. He clenched the scroll. For the first time in his life, he had not just a desire to become strong, he had a reason. Not for glory, not for recognition, not to prove something to those who had laughed, but to understand who betrayed the ancient court, who killed the Empress, and why the Ice Queen chose him specifically. In the distance beyond the pines, something flickered. Ren sharply raised his head. Sarah felt it too. Someone is coming, she said. Hao had already summoned the catfish. Yun tensed. Bo stepped forward. Xiao placed his hand on his sword. A figure in a black cloak emerged from the mist. The face was not visible, only the voice, low, calm, too confident. Do not be afraid. I have not come to kill you. Ren narrowed his eyes. Then why? The stranger raised his head. And at that moment, Ren understood that before him was not a person of the Beihan clan. This was someone else. Because, the stranger said, you have already disturbed those who should not have awakened. Sarah froze. Ren felt the ice inside him become thinner, sharper, more dangerous. The stranger stood calmly at the edge of the lake, as if he had not just been threatened by 5 masters and a mythical spirit. Ren was the first to break the silence. Who are you? The man in the black cloak tilted his head slightly. My name does not matter right now, but if you need something, you may call me Kai. Bo frowned. You may call me means you are not even sure yourself? Kai smirked faintly. I am sure of many things, but not of how ready you are to listen. Sarah instantly tensed. He is not from the Beihan clan, she said quietly, and not from ordinary masters. Ren felt the same thing. A strange spiritual aura came from Kai. Not strong, but old. Very old. As if he had lived beside something ancient for a long time, and had become saturated with it himself. What do you know about us? Ren asked. Enough to warn you. You took the scroll from the archive. So now the hunt for you will begin. Lanzhou and Bei Shen exchanged glances. It was clear that they did not like this. The clan did not want outsiders in its affairs. Were you following us? Hao asked sharply. Yes. Then you are an enemy. Kai looked at him without aggression. If I were an enemy, you would no longer be standing here. It was said calmly. And that was exactly why it sounded dangerous. Ren took a step forward. Speak plainly. Who are you and what do you need? Kai was silent for a moment and finally said, I am the last keeper of the seal of the Northern Palace. The whole group froze. Even Bei Shen's face changed. Sarah abruptly straightened in Ren's chest. What? She breathed. Kai looked directly at Ren. And if you truly awakened the Ice Queen, it means the ancient heritage has begun to move again. Lanzhou was the first to come to his senses. This is impossible. The keepers were destroyed. Not all of them, Kai answered calmly. Only those who were found. Bei Shen took a step forward. Prove it. Kai slowly removed the glove from his right hand. On the skin was a sign, a thin, icy pattern resembling an ancient seal. It glowed with a dim blue light. Sarah froze. I remember this sign, she whispered. Ren looked at her. You know it? Yes, this is the mark of the palace keepers. Kai nodded. I come from the line that served the Empress. After the fall of the palace, we were hunted down one by one. I was hidden. I survived. And all my life I waited for the moment when the door would open again. Ren frowned. What door? Kai looked at the scroll that Ren was still holding in his hands. The door into the heart of the old palace. Hao stepped forward. Are you saying the palace was not destroyed? Only its outer part was destroyed? The true core was sealed. Everyone was silent. Ren slowly shifted his gaze to Sarah. She looked different than usual. Quieter. Heavier. As if Kai's words had struck something old and very painful. I thought you were just a mythical spirit, Ren said quietly. I am a mythical spirit, Sarah answered. But now I understand that this is not the whole truth. Kai continued. In the old palace, there were not only many spirits. The key source of the ice line was kept there, the heart of winter. It maintained the balance. After the betrayal, it was divided and hidden in 3 places. One of them is here. Ren narrowed his eyes. Are you sure? Yes, and if someone else finds all the parts before us, he will be able to use the power of the palace for his own purposes. Yun shuddered. Does the Beihan clan know about this? Bei Shen did not answer. That was already an answer. Ren looked at him harshly. You knew everything. Not everything, Beishen said, but enough to understand the risk. And that is why you hid the truth? That is why we guarded it. Sarah laughed shortly and coldly. Guarded it? No, you hid it. Lanzhou closed his eyes. If this story comes out, a struggle for the heritage will begin. It has already begun, Kai said. The next 24 hours passed in tension. The Beihan clan no longer tried to take the scroll by force, but everyone felt there was no trust. Kai told only part of the story, exactly as much as he considered safe. According to him, the Heart of Winter was the main core of the ancient palace. Through it, the Crystal Empress connected with the northern spiritual line. After the betrayal, the court split apart. Some of the keepers were destroyed, some scattered, some sealed the artifacts in 3 places. One part could be in the Beihan Lake complex, another in the ruined ice temple to the north. The third was unknown. That was exactly why the clan was so nervous. Ren listened to all this and felt not merely curiosity, but a sense of destiny flaring up stronger and stronger inside him. He hated that word, but he could not call it anything else. Sarah became more silent. When Ren was left alone with her, he asked directly, "What is wrong with you?" She looked at the lake for a long time. I remember voices. Whose? From the palace, and not only. There is something else. What exactly? Sarah clenched her small hands. Before the fall of the palace, there was not only politics, there was something beneath it, something ancient, not a spirit, not a human. It should not have awakened. Ren felt cold run down his back. Are you afraid? Sarah raised her eyes to him. Yes, it sounded quiet, but very serious. Ren did not joke. He did not comfort her with foolish words. He simply sat down beside her. Then tell me everything you remember. And she told him. Once, many centuries ago, the North was ruled not by human clans, but by a court of spirits. It was an alliance of the strongest spirits of cold, snow, ice, and silence. The Empress did not simply rule them. She held the boundary between the spirit world and the world of humans. But over time, people became stronger. They began awakening their own spirits. They began building clans. They began to think they could control what was older than they were. One of the Northern Masters wanted to seize the palace's power. He betrayed the Empress and opened the way for those who should have remained beyond the wall. Sarah did not fully know what exactly was beyond the wall, but she remembered fear, and she remembered how they tried to seal the palace at the last moment. I was there, she said quietly, when everything was collapsing. Did you see who betrayed them? Yes. Ren froze. Who? Sarah slowly raised her gaze. One of those who were later called the founders of the Beihan clan. In that second, everything fell into place and at the same time became even worse. Are you sure? Yes. Then they were not simply hiding history, they were hiding a crime. Exactly. Ren looked into the darkness beyond the window. He had long known that clans were never clean. But it was one thing to suspect, another to hear it from an ancient spirit who had seen everything herself. On the third day, Kai said he knew where one of the parts of the Heart of Winter was located. It was an ice temple in the mountains north of Lake Zhan. Old, ruined, almost forgotten. Why did you not say so earlier? Beishen asked. Because I needed to check which of you could be trusted, Kai answered. And? So far, no one completely. Beishen clenched his fists but remained silent. Ren decided to go. Hao, Yun, Bo, and Xiul with him. Kai as the guide. Sarah, of course. The journey took 2 days. The higher they climbed into the mountains, the colder it became. Even the air was different. Thin, sharp, as if the world itself were tightening around old power. The temple stood on a mountainside, half destroyed by snow and time. The columns were broken, the gates hung on the remnants of hinges, and ancient runes covered the stone walls. Ren stopped at the entrance. This place is very old. Yes, Sarah said, and very wrong. Kai looked at the temple tensely. There should be seals here. There were, Sarah answered quietly. But someone touched them. Bo tensed. Is that bad? Kai nodded shortly. Very. They went inside. The central hall was dark. Cracks stretched across the ice floor, and a weak blue light shimmered in their depths. On the far wall stood an altar, and on it half of an ice crystal the size of a human head. The Heart of Winter. Ren felt his breath catch. Sarah slowly descended from his shoulder and hovered in the air before the crystal. This is part of me, she said almost in a whisper. Everyone froze. What does part of you mean? Ren asked. Sarah did not answer immediately. Then she turned to him. I am not only a spirit. I am a fragment of something greater. When the court fell, part of my being was sealed here. And I, the one who came to you, am what managed to survive and awaken separately. Ren felt as if the ground beneath him were disappearing. So you can become stronger, yes, or change, yes, and that can be dangerous? For the first time, Sarah did not answer immediately. Then she said quietly, Very. They did not have time to do anything. People came out of the shadow behind the altar, 3 of them. They wore dark clothes without clan signs. Their faces were hidden by masks. But from them came a heavy, unpleasant spiritual energy, not icy, not spiritual in the usual sense. Something alien. Kai sharply drew his weapon. Back! Ren immediately understood that these people were not here by chance. Who are they? Hao asked. Kai clenched his teeth. Those who are hunting for the heart of winter. One of the strangers slowly raised his hand. Too late, Keeper. The voice was distorted, but Ren still felt uneasy. You are late, he continued. We have already found the second part of the seal. Sarah sharply turned around. What? The stranger laughed quietly. The palace will open again. And at that moment, the entire temple trembled. Snow fell from the wall. The crystal on the altar flared, and black cold began to pour from the crack in the floor. Ren felt everything inside him tighten. It was not ordinary cold. It was hunger. Sarah screamed sharply, Ren, do not let it touch the heart. One of the strangers had already rushed forward. Kai intercepted him. Hao raised a wave of water. Yun blinded the enemy with a flash of light. Bo knocked down the second one. Ren looked only at the third silhouette. He stood by the altar and stretched his hand toward the crystal. He would not reach him in time, but something was already crawling from the floor. Black, viscous energy. Sarah soared upward, and for the first time Ren saw her true power. The world seemed to exhale. The air in the temple turned white. The walls became covered with frost. Silence struck as if sound itself had disappeared. Sarah grew, not physically in the usual sense, rather spiritually. Her silhouette became taller, longer, more majestic. The blue clothing turned into long, icy robes. A silver shine appeared in her hair. Her eyes became cold like starry ice. Ren froze. Now before him stood not a little dog the size of a hand. Before him was truly a queen. The stranger by the altar took a step back. At last, he whispered. Sarah looked at him with such cold that everyone's breath caught. You came too late. And the whole temple exploded with ice. Not fire, not light, but a pure, white, icy strike. The floor beneath the enemy's feet froze in an instant. The walls cracked from the temperature difference. I managed to jump back. Ren felt his own spiritual seal react to Sarah's power, as if all his inner channels had opened wider. Ren, she shouted. Link with me. Now! He did not hesitate. Everything he had done over the past year, all the training, all the falls, all the victories led to this moment. He stretched out his hand, and they connected. It was as if a crystal of ice had been driven into his chest, but not painfully, on the contrary, perfectly precisely. His spirit and her power merged into one movement. Ice went along his arm, then across his shoulders, then over his whole body. The world became clearer, faster, more dangerous. Ren stepped forward and struck. One icy sweep and the black energy near the altar scattered into pieces. The stranger flew back to the wall. The second managed to put up a defense, but it cracked. Hao finished him with a water strike. Bo and Xiao finished off the others. Silence returned as sharply as it had disappeared. Ren stood in the middle of the temple, breathing heavily. Sarah, small again, lowered herself onto his shoulder, but now her face was different, serious, wary. We are too late, she said. What do you mean too late? She looked at the cracked altar. They have already awakened something. There was a passage under the altar. This became clear when Kai found a hidden stone plate. Beneath it was a staircase downward, into darkness. What is there? Hao asked. Kai was pale. What should not have survived? Ren looked at him. Did you know everything? I knew part of it. That is not enough. Then we go down, Ren said. Are you sure? Ren looked at Sarah. She nodded quietly. If there is what I think there is, we cannot leave it without attention. They descended. Below it was colder than in the temple. Very cold. The corridor went deep into the mountain. The walls were covered with runes, some of which had been erased by time, some deliberately. At the end of the corridor was a round chamber. In its center stood a second crystal, black, cracked, with dark light pulsing inside. Sarah froze. No, she whispered. Ren felt his fingers clench. What is it? A seal, she said. But not an ordinary one. Kai exhaled sharply. This is the core of the sealed beast. Everyone turned to him. What? In the old legends, it was said that beneath the palace there was not only the Empress's throne, they kept an ancient creature there. That which could not be killed. It could only be sealed, if the seal is destroyed. It will awaken. Ren looked at the black crystal and felt a new kind of anxiety begin to rise inside him. Not fear of battle, fear of scale. And who is destroying it? He asked. The answer did not come immediately. Then Kai said quietly, those who want to use the power of the palace. Sarah slowly turned to Ren. This is no longer simply a hunt for heritage. He understood. This was the beginning of a new catastrophe. And somewhere in this darkness, someone was already preparing the next step. I continue. I am making the next large piece in exactly the same style without complications, like a story. Kai looked at the black crystal as if he had seen his own death. Ren noticed it immediately. You know what this is? He said quietly. Kai did not answer immediately. He stood with his back tense, his hand on the hilt of his weapon, and his gaze on the cracked core in the center of the underground chamber. Yes, he finally said, and it is bad. Sarah hovered near Ren's shoulder, small again, but now even in this tiny form she looked tense. This is not just a seal, she said. This is a cage. For what? Hao asked. Kai clenched his teeth. For a creature the ancient clans could not kill. They locked it here beneath the northern palace. Then the court fell, knowledge was distorted, part of the archives was destroyed, and only this remained. Yun turned pale. You mean something living is sleeping below? Not sleeping, Sarah said quietly. Waiting. Ren looked at the core and felt a strange impulse came from it. Not power in the usual sense, not a spirit. Not demonic energy as in fairy tales. It was something alien and very ancient, as if the darkness itself beneath the ground knew how to remember. Kai sharply turned around. We are leaving. Too late, Bo whispered. The floor beneath them trembled. The sound came from somewhere in the depths. At first like a muffled groan, then like the beat of a huge heart. And the black crystal cracked even more. Ren felt it first, not with his eyes, not with his ears, with his whole body. Cold came from the core, but not icy, dead. It was the cold of emptiness. The kind that does not make you shiver, but makes you freeze still. Hao stepped back. It is waking up? Kai tore a thin silver chain from his neck and clenched the amulet in his hand. We need to seal it again. Now. With what? Ren asked sharply. Kai looked at the crack in the core. My blood. And your power. Ren frowned. Mine? You carry the Ice Queen. She is connected to the northern line. If we try to close the seal without you, it may shatter completely. Sarah sharply raised her head. No. Everyone looked at her. What do you mean, no? She slowly turned to Ren. If he is right, then the seal can only be closed through a full fusion with my power. It is a risk. A very great risk. Ren did not hesitate. Then we do it. Ren. Yun began. There is no time. Kai nodded. I need your spirit in the circle. He quickly dropped to one knee and began drawing ancient symbols on the floor. Bo covered the entrance to the chamber. Hao was already summoning water to cool the air and slow the strange energy, and Xiao held his sword ready. But the core began to glow. Not red, not blue, but a dim black light that looked like a pit into the world. A sound came from the crack. Deep. Muffled. Like breathing. Sarah grabbed Ren by the shoulder. If I say stop, you stop. Understood. If I say run, you run. Understood. And if I... She fell silent. What? She looked at the black core. If I do not return in my former form, do not panic. Ren froze. What does it mean, not in your former form? Sarah did not answer, because at that moment the core split. What came out of the crack was not a beast in the usual sense. First a shadow appeared, then a long clawed paw, then a second. Then a body, too large for the chamber, twisted and black like nightstone. The creature resembled a wolf, if a wolf had been created from darkness and ancient hunger. Its eyes burned with pale green light. From its mouth came not steam but black strips of mist. Spikes ran along its back like the spine of an extinct monster. Ren felt his fingers grow cold. This. Hao breathed out. The sealed beast, Kai said quietly. The core was its prison, and it is broken. The creature raised its head and looked directly at Ren. Not at Kai, not at Sarah. At him specifically. Sarah sharply flared with icy light. It sees you. Why me? Because you are a linked source. Ren did not understand. But there was no time. The creature took a step forward, and from that step, a wave of destruction passed through the chamber. The floor cracked. Stones fell from the ceiling. Kai shouted, "Into the circle! Quickly!" Ren jumped toward him. Sarah soared upward. Bo struck the beast with force, but it did not even recoil. Hao created a dense stream of water trying to slow it, but the black fur simply threw the moisture to the sides. Yun blinded it with light. The beast blinked but did not stop. Xiao tried to strike its side, but the creature's claws knocked the blade away as if it were a wooden twig. "It is too strong," Bo shouted. "Not strong," Kai breathed out. "Old." Ren was already standing in the circle, and Kai continued drawing symbols around him. "Sarah, now!" She rushed toward him, and when her small blue figure touched his spiritual line, the world changed again. This time the fusion was not soft. It was a blow of ice to the heart. Ren cried out in pain and almost fell to his knees, but held on. Inside him, something opened wider than ever before. Sarah's spirit flow entered him not as a separate force, but as a second axis of movement, a second will, a second breath. The world around became slower. He saw every crack in the stone, every line of spiritual energy, every movement of the sealed beast. And most importantly, he felt not only himself, but also Sarah. Her fear, her memory, her ancient, deep power. "Do not let go," she whispered inside him. "I will not let go." Then close the circle. Kai sharply drove the knife into the center of the symbol, and blood flowed along the ancient lines. Light flared. Ren raised his hand. An ice pillar burst from his palm, struck the floor, and broke apart into a net of the thinnest chains. They spread through the chamber, surrounding the beast from all sides. But it roared and lunged. The chains cracked. Ren stepped back but did not give up. He felt that if he retreated even for a moment now, the creature would break free completely. Then he did what he had never done before. He did not simply use ice. He commanded it. All the air around the beast instantly froze. The temperature collapsed. Frost grew on the walls. The black fur became covered with a white crust. The beast slowed. "Now!" Kai shouted. Ren struck the floor with his palms, and a giant ice dome burst from the circle, covering the beast inside. The creature thrashed, roared, stretched its claws toward the walls, but the dome held. Kai, breathing heavily, completed the final seal. Light struck upward. Darkness howled, and the beast disappeared into the new layer of the seal as if it had fallen back into the stone. Silence came so sharply that everyone felt uneasy. Ren stood, swaying. Sarah trembled inside him. "Did it work?" Hao whispered. Kai fell to one knee, wiped blood from his chin, and looked at the cracked circle. "Temporarily." "Yes." Ren caught his breath. "Temporarily?" Kai raised his heavy gaze to him. "We did not kill it, only locked it deeper. After the battle, they got out of the dungeon only by evening. The temple above was already half destroyed. Steam rose from the stones, so greatly had the temperature changed." Bo walked with difficulty. Hao supported Yun, whose hands were trembling after spiritual exhaustion. Xiao was silent the whole time. That was a bad sign. If Xiao stayed silent for so long, it meant he had seen something very serious. Ren, meanwhile, felt strange. He was exhausted, yes, but at the same time stronger than before. Sarah was silent inside him for almost an hour. Then she said quietly, "Now you know what real pressure is." "Yes, do you not like it?" "I really do not like it," she snorted. "Good, that means you are still alive." When they returned to the lake, Beishen was already waiting for them. And he was not alone. 3 senior masters of the clan and 2 armed students stood with him. Ren stopped. "You were waiting for us." "Yes," Beishen answered shortly. Kai immediately tensed. "What did you do with the archive?" "Nothing that you had not already done yourselves," Beishen answered. Lanzhou stepped forward. The old man's face looked older than before. "Did the sealed beast awaken?" Ren looked at him harshly. "Almost." The senior masters exchanged glances. "So the rumors were true," one of them said quietly. "What rumors?" Yun asked sharply. Lanzhou sighed heavily. That the palace was not completely empty. That an old entity remained beneath it. "We always suspected this, but had no right to reveal it." "Had no right," Ren repeated. "Because of what? Because of fear?" Beishen looked away. "Because of politics." Ren snorted. "Of course." Sarah inside him was quieter than usual. "Ah," she suddenly said. "Whom?" Lanzhou, he knows more than he says. Ren turned to the old man. Who betrayed the Empress? The whole group froze. Lanzhou did not answer immediately. Then he said quietly, one of our ancestors, but not only him. What does that mean? The old man raised his eyes. The fall of the palace was not accidental. It was accelerated by those who wanted the seal to crack. They did not need the court as such. They needed what slept beneath it. Hao turned pale. The sealed beast? Yes. Ren felt everything inside him tighten. And who wanted to awaken it? No answer followed. And that was worse than an answer. At night, Ren did not sleep. He sat on the veranda of the house they had been given by the lake and looked at the water. Sarah stood quietly nearby. She was smaller than usual, almost thoughtful. You are hiding something, Ren said. She did not deny it. Yes, what exactly? Sarah looked at the lake. The sealed beast is not just a monster. Then what is it? A pause. It was part of the palace. It did not serve the Empress. It lived beneath the palace from the very beginning. They could not tame it, so they sealed it. But later someone used its power as the foundation for forbidden rituals. Ren slowly turned his head. Forbidden rituals? Yes. People tried to turn spirits into weapons that did not require consent. And who did this? Sarah was silent for so long that Ren already understood. The answer was unpleasant to her. Some of those who later became the founders of the Beihan clan, she finally said. And also people from an outside alliance. North, east, different clans. They wanted to create a power that belonged only to them. Ren looked at her and felt anger rising inside him. So all of this is not an accident. Not just betrayal. It was a plan. Yes, and you knew part of this from the very beginning. Yes, why did you not tell me earlier? Sarah closed her eyes. Because I was afraid that you would reject me when you learned how deep this story goes. Ren fell silent. It was her first true admission of fear. Not battle, not sharp words, but fear. He sat beside her and said quietly, I will not reject you. She did not turn around. Even if I am connected not only to the Empress, but also to this darkness, even then. Even if I am not just a spirit, but a fragment of something that can change the entire world, especially then. Sarah looked at him for a long time, and then she said very quietly, You have grown faster than you should have. Ren smirked. That is not a compliment. No, just the truth. The Beihan clan unexpectedly offered an alliance. This came as a surprise even to Ren. Lanzhou gathered everyone in the Great Hall and, after a long conversation, said, We can no longer hide that the ancient heritage has awakened, and we cannot allow outsiders to take advantage of it. Kai immediately became wary. You are proposing cooperation? Yes. After everything? Precisely after everything. Ren looked at the old man and did not fully believe him. But the meaning was clear. The Beihan clan had become frightened. Not of Ren, not of Sarah, not of the very fact of the heritage. They were frightened that they no longer controlled the story. And fear makes even ancient clans move. And what do you want in return? Ren asked. Help us search for the remaining parts of the Heart of Winter, Sarah said quietly inside. They are not telling the full truth. But there is some truth in this. Ren nodded. Good, but I also have a condition. Lanzhou looked at him attentively. What is it? No decisions about Sarah without me. This is not up for discussion. The old man was silent for a moment and finally nodded. Accepted. Ren exhaled. This was not trust, not friendship, but it was no longer open war either, and that meant a great deal. When everyone left, Ren and Sira remained by the water again. Light snow was falling over the lake. Hao, Yun, Bo, and Xiao were already asleep. Kai had gone to check the remnants of the seals in the temple. The world was slowly returning to calm, but that calm was fragile. Ren sat on a stone and looked into the darkness. What now? He asked. Sarah sat beside him. Now we search for the remaining parts, and what will happen when we find them? She was silent for a long time. Then I will become either stronger or different. Ren nodded. And that frightens you? Yes, me too. Sarah looked at him in surprise. Why? Ren did not answer immediately. Because I do not want to lose you, not as a spirit, as yourself. Sarah silently looked at him. Then she said very quietly, Then you truly are my master. He smiled. Snow fell onto the water. The moon was reflected in the lake. And somewhere far away beyond the mountains, the world was already moving toward a new disaster. But Ren was not afraid of it. Now he had a path. He had friends. He had the Ice Queen. And he had an enemy who did not yet know how badly he had erred by beginning this awakening. In a dark room far from Lake Jean, a man in a black mask stood before a table. On the table lay three things: a shard of black crystal, a piece of ice with an ancient seal, and a note with a name. Ren! The man in the mask looked at that name for a long time. Then he said quietly, "So he has awakened after all." Behind him, someone asked, "What do we do next?" He smiled beneath the mask. "Continue. Now the hunt has truly begun." And the candle in the room went out by itself.